Final Fantasy. It's great. Yes, I know the title says 6, and I'm holding the cartridge for 1. What are you gonna do? Talk about Final Fantasy 6, that's what.
FF6 is simply one of the greatest video games of all time, not just among RPGs, but all games. It seems like there are an infinite number of ways to analyze it, and to be honest, that idea of returning to something and starting again fits perfectly into what I want to talk about today. I see Final Fantasy VI as a series of beautiful new beginnings. It's triumphant, it's hopeful, and it's filled with moments where our heroes rise, fall, try again, and change for the better. Every one of these new beginnings is meaningful, from the obvious story implications to the deeper themes and overall design.
So let's talk about all of that. Strap in, maybe grind a little in the background, and get ready. We've got a lot to cover.
Final Fantasy VI first graced the Super Nintendo in 1994, so the series had been firmly established by that point. That's why it was a good opportunity for the team at Square to try some new things. One of the biggest changes was the ensemble cast. Instead of having one protagonist in the spotlight, FF6 features 14 playable characters, with nearly everyone getting their own moments to shine throughout the episodic story. Speaking of party members, our party has a special guest today. Joining me to talk about Final Fantasy VI is streamer, YouTuber, and general stuff doer Jesse Cox.
Yeah, I do too much. I stream on YouTube under Jesse Cox. I make videos on YouTube under Jesse Cox. I stream on Twitch under Jesse Cox. Maybe I'll stream on YouTube, I don't know. I do Cox and Crendor, which is a show that is about nothing that we've done for 10 years. I do Chilluminati, which is if you like paranormal, supernatural, weird stuff. I also do a show called The Geekenders, which is kind of like a weekend, hey man, we're just hanging out with our friends. And then I also am the producer of Monster Prom, the Monster Prom series of video games. And I also am working on the upcoming game Gestalt, Steam and Cinder. And then I am also working on an FMV game. And I'm also working on a horror title.
Yeah, he definitely stays busy. And in case you're wondering about his feelings on Final Fantasy VI,
it is the best game ever made. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's scientifically proven, and you don't even have to take my word for it. Go look up reverse design Final Fantasy VI. Pat Holloman, an amazing guy, put together a complete, I think it's in book form now, but you used to be able to just find it on the internet. Scientifically researched why it's an amazing game. Music, the characters, lines of dialogue, everything there. I don't even have to prove it to you. It exists. They did the research.
Scientific research wasn't just done on the game. It's also a big thing in the game. Final Fantasy VI begins in a place called the World of Balance, but in reality, it's a world that's becoming increasingly divided. There's a strong sense of tradition, of the old way of doing things, of honoring the ancient past. Doma Castle is a prime example. This is butted up against a technological push into the future. Just look at Castle Figaro. It's a giant drill that can burrow into the earth. There's a clash between magic and technology too. Magic spells are seen as something dangerous, something that must be sealed away. In the past, the War of the Triad and preceding War of the Magi were conflicts that tore the world apart and set it back centuries. We could look at the years that followed and label them as the first new beginning in this video. This present-day World of Balance is kept at peace by both magic being forbidden and by the three deities of the warring triad locked in a mutually petrified state, preventing any one of them from wreaking havoc. And yet, this World of Balance is once again at war. As the game begins, we find ourselves under the shadow of the encroaching Gestalian Empire. Even worse, Emperor Gestal has magic-infused soldiers and machines in his army. He's harnessing that forbidden power to take over the world, and that's what our party members need to stop.
You're operating with all these different characters, and depending on what you use, you get different scenes. the theme is the same. You're just experiencing different versions of characters who have their own goals and their own ideas going through that. The story changes based on who you're using in your party.
Not only does the story itself change based on your party lineup, but each individual party member has their own handful of new beginnings.
And that means we've got to talk about almost all of them.
Of the 14 in the game, we're only going to talk about these 11. Truthfully, some of these companions are just meant to fill out the ranks. Your party splits pretty often in Final Fantasy VI, so the devs wanted to make sure you had enough characters to create multiple teams. It is an ensemble cast, but not everyone gets equal attention. Sorry to all the Umaro fans out there, but a Yeti just doesn't have the same level of character development. And so, we'll talk about these 11 heroes. To keep things focused, we're gonna categorize them. For the purposes of this video, I've taken this concept of new beginnings and split it into 3 categories. We'll put our party members in one of these columns as we move along. First, I believe a new beginning can be chosen. This is when a character makes a decision and immediately kicks into action, never looking back. Or their new beginning could be proven. This is when a character wants to make a change or show others that they have changed, but it takes time to, well, prove it, either to themselves or to others. And finally, a new beginning could be given. Either the character was granted some sort of second chance, or they needed the approval of someone else to actually make the change they wanted to.
There is a fake ending in the game, so everyone has to begin again at some point. So no matter what, you're definitely correct. I'm interested to hear who you think goes where.
Just like I told Jesse, go ahead and leave a comment on where you would place them. There's a lot of overlap here, and all of these characters dabble in each category to some degree. The fact that we can project so many meanings onto the game speaks to how well crafted it truly is. Let's start at the start. The first character you control in Final Fantasy VI is Terra Branford, a slave to the Gastolian Empire. She and her fellow soldiers have been sent to the town of Narsh to find a frozen Esper, one of those magical beings that were locked away. This one actually communes with her, knocking her and her companions unconscious. When she wakes up, she finds herself not just in a new place, but also a new state of mind. The slave crown the Empire used to control her has been removed. This new beginning for her is, quite literally, the beginning of the game as well. For our first placement on the board, we'll put her in the given category. This new freedom was granted by the kind man who removed the slave crown. But to go from mind control to full free will almost instantaneously is a major mind bender. What is she even supposed to do with this new autonomy?
I think Terra as a character is one that, for a large majority of the game, is kind of trying to find herself, and everyone's telling her who she should be or what she should do, and it isn't until the events of the floating island, or floating whatever we're gonna call it, that she actually kind of figures it out when she oh yeah, my past, I get it, and then she's cut off from the game.
Terra spends a lot of time drifting from place to place, but learning about that past cements her even more in the given category. As we discover, she's the living representation of 2 worlds, one of humans and one of magic. She's half Esper. Not only was she given a hybrid life by her parents, but she was also the only one to escape when the Esper world was invaded by Emperor Gestalt. Granted, this was straight up kidnapping on the Emperor's part, but the escape was granted to her nonetheless. Throughout this video, we'll be talking about both the world of balance and the world of ruin. That's the fake ending Jesse mentioned before. And when Terra returns in the second part of the game, we find that she's begun taking care of orphans in the town of Mobliz. It's a full circle moment for her. She was orphaned as a baby, taken from her parents as their world was sealed away. Now she can give these children their own new beginnings by becoming a substitute mother for them. So, Terra's mixed birth, her delivery into the hands of the Emperor, her freedom from his magic army, her failure to stop the destruction of the world at the end of Part 1, these were all new beginnings given to her, so that she could finally discover who she's meant to be.
She has this little patch of land that's kind of perfect. She knows who she is, and she realizes, yeah, I'm not a hero for me, I'm a hero because I'm trying to take care of these damn kids, and that's who I am as a character.
As we'll see with all of these characters, you can't have a new beginning without an ending. And as each sad chapter closes behind Terra, she moves closer to completing that beautiful, heroic character arc. The second party member we meet is Locke Cole, a treasure thief, though he definitely prefers a less loaded title. By the time he shows up, Locke is already part of the Returners, a rebel group with a mission to take down the Empire. His job is to get Terra safely out of the city, because, as you can imagine, the people don't really want an agent of the Empire hanging around.
He is the first person, I would say, who made the choice to take care of her. He's one of those guys who was like, I got called in from moment one, and they were like, you gotta look out for this girl, she's loopy, dude. And then from that point on, he's kind of just the hero the entire time. Even in the World of Ruin, dude is still like, well, I made the choice to be this is who I am. He's the standard, like, dashing rogue character.
So Jesse puts Locke in the chosen category, but for me, he goes into proven. There are good reasons for both, so now I'll give my take. Like Jesse said, Locke is basically a hero from moment one. There isn't a dramatic change. That said, he's not a one-dimensional character. He's hiding something. There are hints from other characters that Locke has lost something in the past, and when we reach the village of Kolingen, we find out what it was. His lover, Rachel. She died when the Empire invaded their town. That's clear motivation for Locke to join the Returners, of course, but all this globe-trotting, treasure-hunting hero stuff might just be for lack of closure. He feels a need to be the hero because he couldn't save the person who was most important to him. That's why he's the one that frees Celes upon finding her in a prison beneath South Figaro.
He's like, oh, damn, that's a general chained up. Well, I can't let her be chained up. I gotta be the hero again.
A prison break isn't exactly a meet cute, but it is the beginning of an eventual romance between Locke and Celes. And this is why I categorize Locke the way I do. He has to prove to himself that he can let Rachel go and move on. Her body still sits in a basement in town, and when Locke returns in the World of Ruin, he believes he's found a way to finally bring her back. And you know what? The Phoenix Magicite totally does work, for a moment. Just long enough for Rachel to give Locke her blessing of him being with Celes. Wait, that kind of puts him in the given category too.
Maybe these are all so arbitrary they don't even matter. Or maybe they're just a helpful framework, ding, for talking about the game. I don't know. But hey, thanks for watching.
Now it's time to talk about the Royal Figaro twins, Edgar and Sabin. Sadly, like Terra, their parents are gone too. The queen died giving birth to them, and the king was actually poisoned by the Empire as Gestahl started his bid for control. Edgar took over as the new king, so we meet him first upon reaching Figaro Castle. That's the one from earlier that can drill through the sand. Edgar himself is just as techie. Like I said before, Final Fantasy VI shows a clash between the old and the new, between ancient traditions and emerging technology. Edgar is on the cutting edge with his tools, and he's kinda smug about it.
It's an interesting way to do a king, right? They had, all right, who's gonna be the leader of this kingdom? And they were like, all right, make it a young dude who's kind of full of himself. And also, it isn't just a kingdom, it's also, they're all engineers, and they all have crazy things, and this guy's abilities are going to be some of the coolest looking ones in the game. The auto crossbow is one of my favorite ones. It looks neat. Yeah, even the chainsaw. Everything he has is great.
We both love Edgar, and his new beginning comes pretty quickly. At first, he's taking a more passive role in the war. He supports the Returners, but he's not actively carrying out missions like Locke. He won't hand Terra over to the Empire when they come knocking, but he isn't raising his weapons against them either.
At the beginning, when you first get there, he's like, whoa, I don't know if I can do this. And then Kefka shows up and he's like, all right, no, F that guy.
Now don't you worry, we're gonna spend some time on Kefka in this video too. But for now, all you need to know is that he's the Emperor's mad jester, and when he doesn't get what he wants from Edgar, he sets the whole castle on fire. This is the literal and metaphorical spark that kicks Edgar into gear. If he wasn't ready to fight the Empire before, he sure is now. Upon witnessing Terra's magical abilities, he knows that she needs to be a part of the Returners too. It's the loss of his castle that leads into a new beginning as an active part of the rebellion. That desire to see the Empire fall is more or less where Edgar stays for the rest of the game, having made the choice to begin again as a true freedom fighter. We'll stick him in the chosen category as such. As for the world of Ruin, Edgar's fighting spirit drives him to don a disguise and lead a band of thieves to retake his castle. Also, he's going by Gerard now. Yeah, we see what you did there, Edgar.
Let's leave the thieving and disguising to Locke, huh?
Now, if you thought Edgar sounded a little one note, then you might also feel the same about his brother, Sabin. But trust us, people love him for a reason.
Man suplexes a train. That's all you need to know. It's one of the greatest scenes in video game history.
All right, moving on. I'm kidding. There's more to say.
I think he's one of those characters who is great for being the straight man, is the best way to put it. Because he's kind of like a different version of full of himself, like Edgar, but his is about how tough he is and how much he's overcome.
Sabin definitely likes to show off, that's for sure. He dives into the water after the first Ultros fight, and again off of Barren Falls, and again off of Crescent Mountain. Maybe he just did a lot of swimming when he trained as a martial arts monk, because that's where he went after Edgar took over the throne. It's a touching moment learning about how the twins took different paths in life, and it's the main inspiration for the given category in this video. Edgar knew his brother Sabin always wanted to live his own life outside of the castle, so he gave it to him. When the brothers flipped a coin to decide who would stay on the throne and who would leave the castle behind, Edgar used a trick coin to guarantee that Sabin got to live his new life. So we know exactly where he goes on this chart. Now you might think that third category is a little passive, but it really is just as important as the other two. If Edgar hadn't given Sabin that opportunity, he wouldn't be the same person we meet during the game. His royal life needed to come to an end so that he could have a new beginning as a buff monk with awesome blitz attacks. He's physically strong, but he also serves as a backbone for the rest of the party. That's a vital role in a game with such a robust ensemble cast.
Not every character needs to have the the most important story. And so he serves as like a rock for other characters around him.
That continues into the world of Ruin, where we find him holding up the roof of a collapsing mansion after Kefka attacked the town of Zen. That gives Celes the opportunity to rush inside and save a little girl. This perfectly illustrates what Jesse was saying about Sabin's role in the story. He carries the burdens for others so that they can be the heroes, and that makes him pretty heroic too. Now we move from Sabin to Shadow. Locke's not the only one with a troubled past, as it turns out. Frankly, everyone in this game has some trauma they need to work through, but Shadow's backstory, as his name implies, might just be the murkiest. When we meet him in South Figaro, he's just a merc in a ninja suit hanging out at the bar.
Shadow's a character who, kind of keeps to himself, doesn't say much, is kind of a badass. He's what every 13-year-old thinks is cool. And also at the same time, when you sleep with him at certain inns, you get flashbacks of his life. And if you don't use him all the time, you will not have the whole story.
So what is the whole story? Well, as we learn through those flashbacks, Shadow's real name is Clyde, and he used to be a thief. Locke really has some competition in that department, huh? Anyway, Clyde's partner Baram was injured, and Clyde made the choice to ditch him. Again, not every new beginning has the purest motivation. Clyde eventually settled down in Thamasa, but he made another poor decision to ditch his family there, too. He even took the dog with him.
Man loves his dog more than his daughter.
I can't be mad at Interceptor, though. He's one of the goodest boys in all of Final Fantasy. So while Shadow, aka Clyde's choices don't exactly paint him in the best light, they do put him in the chosen category for me. Heck, he even repeats the same mistake when he helps save Relm in Thamasa, then immediately jets. Now isn't that interesting? Well anyway, what do you think, Jesse?
Maybe you could say that his World of Ruin is a given, because literally you're like, hey pal, you get to live.
Hey, fair enough. We'll stick that up on the board too. Jesse is referring to the final moments of the World of Balance, after Shadow has split from the party. He'll survive, but only if you wait for him until the last few seconds before everything blows up. When you pick up in the World of Ruin, you'll find him fighting in the Colosseum, still slinging his blade instead of dealing with his feelings. Men will literally do anything except go to therapy, huh? But as we'll see later on, At least one good thing might have come out of this lone wolf lifestyle.
Shadow I love because Shadow's a complete mystery, but one of the main mysteries is like, wait a minute, maybe Shadow's the father of this other character.
Oh, we'll get there soon.
First, we have to talk about Celes Chere, my personal favorite party member. She's unique among the cast because she once served the Empire by choice, not by mind control like Terra. In fact, she was one of Emperor Gestal's top generals, but she eventually saw the evil in what was happening and turned to the light. That's why Locke finds her, well, locked up.
Out of all the characters, I think her story arc is the biggest, and I don't want to say most important, but I feel like it's the most important. Like, she doesn't show up for a while, and then once she does, she is sort of the, do we trust her, do we not? Locke does, so I guess we're good.
That question of trust is why I put Celes here, in the proven category. At some point off screen, she did make a choice to leave the Empire, but from that point on, she has to prove to everyone else that she's truly on their side. The choice to leave might have kickstarted that new beginning for her, but if she can't prove herself to be a trustworthy part of the team, then she might as well still be one of the bad guys. In many ways, Celes and Terra's stories run parallel. Final Fantasy VI has an ensemble cast, but these two ladies are debatably the main characters. Terra was a magic slave in the army, and Celes was infused with magic at a young age so that she could train as a rune knight. Now, does that sound like someone who would put on an opera costume and sing a solo?
Sorry, let me give you a little more context on that.
When the party wants to acquire an airship, their only plan is to trick its pilot into picking them up. This scheme involves Celes dressing up like a famous opera star so the airship will snatch her instead. It's definitely contrived, but it does lead to one of the most iconic scenes in all of Final Fantasy, whether you're playing the original 6 or the Pixel Remaster that I've been showing in this video.
Oh, my hero, my beloved.
So I ask you again, is that something a general and an evil army would do? I don't think so. Unfortunately, not even her former cohorts in the Empire believe she's truly left them. When we reach Vector, the capital of the Empire, we meet Cid, who I've talked about on this channel before. Kind of. Cid is the scientist who made young Celes into a rune knight in the first place, and he's heard rumors that she's actually a spy sent to infiltrate the returners. We know this isn't true, and we also know it was Kefka who started those nasty rumors as a way to sow more discord. It's another moment where Celes needs to prove her loyalty to the team. Moments like these repeat again and again for Celes, up until the point of actually stabbing Kefka atop the floating continent. As everything crumbles and we move into the second part of the game, we pick up on a small isolated island in control of her, and she's really not in a good headspace.
She's willing to end it all because it's that bad. And that's the character we start with.
You can't really blame her. Celes tried over and over again to prove that she had changed, and look how things ended up. The world is destroyed, the party is scattered, and she's all alone after Cid dies on the island with her. But again, harsh endings lead to beautiful new beginnings. Just as Terra built a party around her in the world of balance, Celes is the one to reunite them in the world of ruin. If she hadn't already proved herself before, then getting the band back together is the ultimate proof of where her loyalty lies. She's the spark that lights a new, final rebellion against Kefka in the second half of the game. Our next party member, Cyan Garamonde, doesn't wrap up his character arc until the World of Ruin either. If Edgar represents the new, then Cyan absolutely represents the old. Just look at the way he talks. He even has a full-on fear of machines. I'm sure he also has a hatred for poison, because his story begins with one of the most tragic events in the entire game. You see, Cyan is a mighty warrior from the Doma Kingdom. He single-handedly defends the castle from the Empire, keeping his family and countrymen safe. Unfortunately, his noble samurai skills are no match for Kefka's vile schemes. The Mad Clown poisons the water around Doma, leading to the deaths of almost everyone inside the castle walls, including Cyan's own wife and children.
he's a character who has a really sad, messed up arc, but someone has to in a game where a bad guy is as messed up as Kefka, right? Like, you have to have someone take the brunt of the damage.
At this point, it would be easy to say that Cyan makes the choice to start anew on the warpath against the Empire. He certainly does, but I don't think we can categorize him there. I think there's a lot more that Cyan needs to prove to himself before he can actually overcome the tragedy that he experienced. First, he has to face his fear of technology almost immediately. Cyan, Sabin, and Shadow soon battle the Phantom Train, a vehicle that ferries souls off to the afterlife. Also, you can suplex it like we said before. It's rad. Cyan's deceased family is being taken away by that train, so not only does he have to face a piece of technology that he hates and fears, but it mocks him by being the very same thing that takes his family away.
I would say is given to him by his family, allowing him to let go. Because he literally chases them onto a death train, the doom train. You know, I think he was like, I'll kill myself for you, just like you tell me. And they're like, no, it's chill. Just, these people need you more than us.
Alright, so we can place Cyan in both of those categories then. In either case, the fruits of this new beginning are not apparent until later in the game. He's able to forgive General Leo, who led the original siege on Doma Castle. That's huge. When we reunite with Cyan in the world of Ruin, we see that he's been able to overcome both the loss of his family and his fear of technology. Cyan's path of the Ronin has led him to live an isolated life atop Mount Zozo, but he's still communicating with the outside world a bit. He's been impersonating a dead soldier and sending letters to his girlfriend Lola.
Yeah, like I said, not everything the heroes do in this game is the wisest choice.
By the time we climb Mount Zozo, Cyan has written a final letter confessing all of this and asking Lola not to get hung up on the past, like he once was. This is the final proof that he's been able to let his family go. And if you check his treasure chest right after that, you'll find he's actually become quite curious about technology too. Now we talk about Cave Boy, Gao.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do that voice.
As I was saying, Gao is more or less a caveman, living alone in a region called the Veldt. It's a place full of dangerous creatures, so it is rather impressive that he's able to survive.
He's good to be a foil for the other characters because he's so goofy, comparatively. He's basically just a caveman in modern times. He's a wolf boy, and we pull him in, and he doesn't understand society, and the people we stick him with up front are literally the two most stoic characters in the entire game.
One of those characters is Cyan, who, having just lost his family, is probably looking for a place to put his fatherly love.
His, interactions with Gao are some of the best in the game because it's like I don't want to say replacement child, but it's a man who's lost his family, now sort of given this found family.
That's a two-way street, because Gao is without a father himself. He's like this because he was abandoned at birth, and it's not until the world of Ruin that he even gets a chance to reconcile that. As it turns out, Gao's mother died while giving birth to him, and this led his father to lose his mind and ditch the baby on the Veldt. You can visit his living father in the world of Ruin, but even with Gao getting all gussied up in fancy clothes, there just isn't a clear line of communication between a feral child and his mentally ill father. But that doesn't stop Gao from forgiving him. For Gao, simply knowing his father is alive is enough. He chooses to begin again with that knowledge, intent on staying with the Returners until the world is restored. With that, we can finally place him under the Chosen section. Also, there's kind of a meta thing where Gao gets a new beginning every time you use his rage ability. He briefly leaves the party, then rejoins having learned a new technique from the enemies you were facing. But we're gonna leave that alone for now. Let's take to the skies for our next party member, Setzer Gabbiani.
First off, when I was a child, I would always call him Seltzer, because for some reason, the word Setzer in my brain made no sense.
Whatever you want to call him, Setzer shows up during that famous opera scene. He pilots the world's only airship, dubbed the Blackjack. and per the Final Fantasy bylaws, your party has to eventually get themselves one of those. When he flies in and snatches Celes, you get your chance.
There's more kidnapping in this game than I remember.
It's pretty easy to bring Setzer over to your cause. He's a gambler, and since his airship casino isn't doing too hot, the only thing he really has left to bet is his own future. Edgar's coin toss wins him over pretty easily. And yes, that is the same rigged coin he used to grant Sabin a break from his royal duties. But even though he's been tricked, Setzer accepts the outcome because he just can't help himself.
Even though it's one of those rigged coin flip things, he's like, you guys, you're so crazy, you crazy kids. How could I not join in this adventure? You're like, all right, let's go.
It's a pretty easy choice for Setzer to make, and for that, he goes in the chosen category. But at the same time, the recklessness of that bet might seem a little off, almost as if Setzer has some sort of death wish.
Sadly, in the first part of the game, he's barely he's just like the guy with the airship, and it isn't until World of Ruin and much later that we're like, oh, here's his backstory, and we now know, like, well, there was the other person who had an air. Like, there's so many other things about this character, but it doesn't happen until much later.
That other person is Daryl, Setzer's girlfriend and the only other airship pilot around. Sadly, she crashed and died sometime before the events of the game. Setzer has been a gambling man with nothing to lose ever since. He almost goes the same way as Daryl, since his own ship gets torn apart after the events of the floating continent. When we find him in the world of Ruin, he's at rock bottom. Now there isn't a single airship in the skies, and he just wants to pay Daryl's tomb a visit. Perhaps he feels his time is drawing to a close too. But just as Terra brought things full circle in her character arc, Setzer does the same thing here and finds a new, beautiful reason to live. He decides to fix up and fly Daryl's ship, the Falcon, in her honor. This time, he makes a choice for both of them. This new beginning is a second wind for both him and the Falcon. How else are you supposed to even reach Kefka's tower? But before we confront the clown, we've got our final two party members to talk about. I've mentioned the village of Thamasa once before, and this time it might make your ears perk up. It's the home of Strago Magus, the Blue Mage. On a meta level, his special ability to learn enemy spells, like the way Gao gains new techniques, is a similar pattern of new beginnings, but as the oldest member of the party, his place in this video is honestly a lot more straightforward. While staying in town, the party saves Strago's granddaughter Relm from a fire, the same one where Shadow makes that brief appearance. After the fire, Strago believes he owes the party a debt, so he joins them on their quest.
Kinda feels like you're aping Edgar's story with the whole fire thing there, Strago.
It's an easy choice on Strago's part, so categorizing him is also easy, though I do believe there's a little more under the surface. Thamasa is a village of magic users hidden away from the rest of the world, and it seems like Strago is itching for one more adventure in his old age. Even so, like I said before, his joining the party is straightforward. If he is indeed seeking one last adventure, the Returner's cause definitely grants it.
I think his story is one of, I'm just here to be the guy in charge of this town for a few scenes. Oh, I gotta look out for Relm. Okay, I guess I'll come with you. You're like, okay, cool. But he helps Relm's story take off.
That's the perfect segue to our final party member, Relm Arrowny. She makes magical paintings, she's Strago's granddaughter, and she has one of my favorite music themes in the entire game. With Relm and Strago, we have both the youngest and oldest members of the party, respectively. It makes sense that Strago doesn't want her to come along for the adventure. She did almost get turned into toaster strudel. But a warning from Strago isn't enough to stop her. Rambunctious Relm can be seen following the party on their quest inside the Esper Cave just southwest of Thamasa. Honestly, it's a good thing she's there, because she's the one who actually defeats Ultros in your umpteenth fight against him. Having finally proven herself to Strago, he finally gives her parental permission to join the party. I know I named two different categories there, But for thematic reasons, I'm gonna put her in the given column. And that's pretty much that. Or is it?
Yeah, she kind of is just another one of those, I am here, unless you start digging deep into the Shadow story, in which case you're like, oh!
Oh yeah, let's do that. If you didn't already know, you've probably guessed by now that Relm is Shadow's estranged daughter. She's from Thamasa, where he settled down, she instantly connects with Interceptor, and she and Shadow are the only party members that can wear the Memento Ring. The game never explicitly states this connection, but come on, we all know. There's more to Relm than just being the token kid character. By the time we find her in the world of Ruin, she's been making a name for herself as a painting prodigy. Go figure. What I love about the second half of the game is how Relm and Strago sort of reverse roles, with her looking out for him. I didn't mention this in the last section, but Strago is found among a group of cultists in the world of Ruin. I guess he got taken in by one of those senior scams. Thankfully, Relm can help him snap out of it. There's also an entire side quest in which Strago can hunt down Hidan, a monster that he never managed to beat in his younger years. Relm, along with Strago's pal Gung-Ho, actually tricks Strago into completing this quest. Just as Strago gave Relm permission for her new beginning with the party, she in turn granted him another chance at adventure. If going to Kefka's tower is going to be a suicide mission, then at least Strago can cross Hidan off his bucket list.
Okay, it's time to talk about him.
Kefka isn't a party member, of course, but we simply have to talk about him in this video. He won't go on the board, though. Kefka's in his own league.
It is a solid Final Fantasy trope that I love, where it's like, there's the one villain who's like, I am the bad guy, and my plan is to take over the world. And in this case, that would probably be the Emperor, right? And then there's always bad guy 2 who's like, I am also a villain, but guess what? I'm crazy. And my version of take over the world is destroy the world. Because insert existential dread / weird nihilistic vibes.
That desire to destroy the world comes from a broken mind. He was the first person to receive magical infusions from the Emperor, and it did not go well. What we get is a villain among villains. And I'm not just saying that because he's a favorite among Final Fantasy fans. Kefka is called out for going too far even for the Empire. The aforementioned General Leo wants to take Doma Castle in honorable combat. Kefka just drops poison in the water, kicking off a whole series of events for Cyan. In fact, these attacks are what drive many of the party members together. I wouldn't be surprised if something like this was exactly what made Celes trade sides. Kefka was the one who put the slave crown on Terra's head, too. The destruction left in his wake forces others to pick up the pieces and rebuild.
The whole point of the game thematically is like, when you're down, what do you do? And that it's a lesson in hope in a world with none is what the point of this game is. And you can't have that unless something terrible happens, and the terrible thing is the bad guy just straight up wins.
It's true. We've spent this whole video talking about how our characters make the most out of tragic situations. Well, Kefka is the person behind those situations. He's the one who ushers in the world of Ruin by breaking the balance of the warring triad atop the floating continent. But by causing everyone to reach their lowest point, he's also given them only one way to go: up.
Yeah, you tried your hardest and you still lost. I think that's a phenomenal lesson for any kid to learn, that like, you can be your best. You can level up and max out all your stats. You can be the coolest dude in the world and still lose. What do you do after that? And so metaphorically, that moment is like, all right, every one of these characters has to pick themselves up again and continue on. But they all continue on in a different way that is true to who they are as a character.
That's exactly what we see in the second half of the game. Reuniting with friends, rising from the ashes, preparing to storm the tower and take Kefka out once and for all. We've talked about how each party member completes or reiterates their character arc in the world of Ruin, and the simple truth is, that wouldn't have happened without a fire being lit underneath them. Speaking of fire, we should actually talk about magic now. It was sealed away for a reason. It's simply too powerful. And honestly, that's what makes the magic system in Final Fantasy VI so satisfying.
It is interesting that they don't hamper you based on already pre-built classes. So you can have engineer Edgar and, punchy guy Sabin both learn to heal. So the game is designed around everyone having access to everything.
Like Jesse said, the system lets anyone learn anything. It takes time for it to be introduced, but eventually the Esper Ramu grants the party their first batch of Magicite, the crystallized remains of those magical beings. Equip one, and you can learn a series of associated spells as you level up. It's along the same meta lines as Gao and Strago's special abilities, but there's more going on here. You see, it's not just characters who get new beginnings, but the concept of magic too. It's an intrinsic, if hidden, part of this world. Learning it sets your team apart as a special group of heroes. The wars of the past have shown magic to be dangerous, but in the right hands, what was once a weapon of war can still have a new beginning. It can be a tool for justice and restoration.
And hey, you better be ready, because at the very end of the game, we're sending you in with most of your party members. And if you want to make this easy, you're going to have at least one person in every group who can heal, and one person in every group who can do damage.
Kefka and the Emperor brought magic back into the world with malicious intent, but your party turns it back around to knock Kefka out of his godlike tower. Magic is proven to be something that's not inherently evil. That all depends on the person wielding it. In the final moments of the game, that magic begins to fade. Yes, it's only dangerous in the wrong hands, but maybe that's still too great of a risk. That's the realization the party comes to at the game's climax. Scaling Kefka's tower, defeating him and the other deities, this effectively erases magic from the world. Terra uses the last of her abilities to pull the party to safety aboard the Falcon, getting everyone out as her Esper half fades away.
It is a selfless act on her behalf because her whole vibe is magic. She's one half Esper, so she loses a lot of herself as well. It goes to show kind of the way the story's told in that the first act, magic is this thing, and technology is something we don't want that. The bad guys have technology. And in the world of Ruin, it's all chaotic magic and everything's terrible, and it's like, we need to get rid of this, but in order to do that, we must embrace the technology in order to keep going.
Jesse is right on the money there. Technology has its hand in every plot point in Final Fantasy VI. We've talked about the clash of tech and magic throughout the video, and now I want us to pull back a little. We've seen new beginnings for characters and magic, but from a development perspective, FF6 represents a new beginning for the franchise as a whole. When you think steampunk, your mind might go to FF7 as the first one to do that, but you'd actually be wrong. Final Fantasy VI is where that all started, and it makes sense. The game shows a clash between magic and technology, and what is steampunk if not the fusion of those same two things?
When you first get to the capital, it looks like you're in Blade Runner all of a sudden.
This steampunk aesthetic would go on to become a series staple. Now it's a big deal when a Final Fantasy game drops it to go pure medieval. This steampunk vibe is a beautiful new beginning for the series, ushered in by FF6. If the FF7 fans weren't mad at me already, they will be now. What you're looking at is Final Fantasy VI, the interactive CG game, a demo that Square built as a proof of concept for bringing the series into 3D.
To be clear, 7 was the first full 3D Final Fantasy game, which moved the series from Nintendo to PlayStation. But it wasn't the first 3D Final Fantasy gaming experience. Sorry.
Final Fantasy VI is a game all about emerging technology, so it makes sense that the devs would use it to showcase new tech in the real world too. Thus, we get Terra, who's blonde now and really skimpily dressed for some reason, Locke, and Shadow, engaging in some 3D battles. From the steampunk in the game to this demo beyond the game, Final Fantasy VI is all about new technological beginnings. Nice, 3D Bahamut. Final Fantasy VI has come a long way since its 1994 debut, and we've come a long way just by talking about it. Every time you sit down to play an FF game, or any RPG for that matter, it's a new beginning for you, the player. Replaying 6 for its anniversary gave me that perspective, which I just spent the last little while sharing with you.
It is something where, as a fan of Final Fantasy just across the board, being able to go back into 6 and experiencing it again and getting to see things that I, at the time read differently or saw differently, has always been fun. It's always one of those things where I've really appreciated how much there is in the game.
What Jesse said there is key. There is so much in the game that we can all see things differently. I've presented my case. I see Final Fantasy VI as a series of beautiful new beginnings, from the individual characters, to the mechanics and the world at large, to the aesthetics and design decisions happening behind the scenes. You might categorize some of those things differently. You might not see the game through that kind of lens at all, and that's okay. What makes this game great is that it's so open for this sort of discussion.
It is, without a doubt, the greatest game ever made, by man or beast. And all other games are lesser in comparison. And it doesn't mean they're bad, it just means that number 1 is so high up there that number 2 can only look up in awe of its glorious angelic wings and choral music. And unfortunately, there's a lot of other games that have come out since and people said are great, but really, truthfully, at the end of the day, Final Fantasy VI is the greatest game ever made. It's just a fact.
I think the passion we have for Final Fantasy VI is loud and clear. Maybe it's inspired you to play it for the first time, and if so, that's awesome. Even though this video was full of spoilers, there is still so much more to experience in the game. The entire point of this video was to show that a new beginning can lead to greater things. If watching it made you want to replay the game to see it through a new lens, that's pretty awesome too. I'm kinda getting the itch to do it myself.
Hey, thank you so much for watching this video, and thank you again to Jesse for taking the time. If you like what Framework is doing, definitely hit that subscribe button in the middle. It would help me out an awful lot if you do. And if you want to check out the other videos I've made, you can hit that link on the far left. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.